It's just powerful to feel the vastness of the ancestral support that was really holding not just me now, but really holding me from the moment of my first breath. That was incredibly healing to understand.
This is Rebel Therapist, a podcast where you get to hear therapists and healers get vulnerable and real about our own growth and healing. I'm your host, Annie Schuessler, a healer and former therapist. My favorite kind of practitioner is the kind that wouldn't ask their client to do anything they wouldn't do themselves. Sonya Brewer is a trauma specialist and relationship expert who specializes in creative life and relationship design for overachieving trauma survivors and their partners. She helps trauma survivors feel more alive, connected, and authentic so they can create the lives and relationships they truly want. In this conversation, Sonya shares vulnerably about doing her own deep work over the years. She shares the processes she went through to heal her childhood emotional neglect and other traumas. And she also talks about how her own healing has impacted her work as a therapist and healer. Please note the recording quality is inconsistent in this interview, but it's well worth it. Thank you so much, Sonya, for doing this with me.
Oh, I'm delighted, always.
So you do so much powerful work with folks. And I know you've also done a lot of your own healing. When you think about the healing that you've received over the years, what stands out to you as particularly powerful, particularly something that just comes right to the top of your mind?
Yeah. I mean, I've done a lot of very powerful things. The first really big breakthrough, even before I got any real benefit from psychotherapy, was breath work.
Ooh.
That was really huge for me. I started doing breath work with this woman who was a neo-tantra teacher, and that was my first opening into really the power of body-based healing, like what can happen in the body just working with something as simple as the breath.
How old were you?
I was in my mid-20s.
Wow.
Like 25, 26 when I started. And it also was my first, it was like an opening into a bigger sense of consciousness, something. I've always been a spiritual person, even as a kid, but that breath work really, it awakened or helped me remember something about myself as a spiritual being that has been, I've really carried with me.
And were you already a therapist or becoming a therapist at that time?
No, I had no idea. No idea about this whole therapy path that I was on. I think I might have been working for an investment management company as
oh wow, okay.
was really, really on a different track.
What do you remember about that first breath work that you'd feel comfortable sharing? Did you see things? Did you feel something really different? Especially for folks who have no idea,
right.
breath, whatever.
Yeah, there were a few things that happened. Right. What is that? Right. Yeah, there were a few things. One, I felt a kind of opening emotionally. So there was sometimes catharsis, I might cry, I might shake, I might, there was a cracking open, a softening, a thawing of a lot of my emotional armor. And so I had just access to my emotional self in a way that I had not had before that. But also, because of all of that sort of emotional release, I also felt in my body a softening. So, I had chronic TMJ stuff that really shifted, all that holding through my jaw and neck. I was already starting to have chronic kind of back, just pain stuff in my back, my shoulders. Those things sort of just softened, opened the kind of holding that I had lived with for who knows how long in my body and my muscles started to really shift.
Was this breath work in a group or was it individual?
It was all group work, which was also super healing for me to be doing that work in community.
Yeah.
And it was also the first time that I talked in a group context about being a survivor of childhood sexual abuse.
Mm-hmm.
And, as we know that, that work, the healing work in community, particularly around sexual abuse, can be so powerful. And yeah, it was just the beginning of a whole road for me.
Mm. And did you experience that group as like safe enough as you look back on it and what happened in that group and how you were received?
Yeah, it was, it was definitely safe in a lot of ways. It was safe enough for me to do that work. It was not racially diverse.
Mm-hmm.
And so I did get, quite a few racial microaggressions that were hard. But I was also used to that, like used to
Mm.
navigating in spaces where that was a part of what you have to navigate. So in that way, it wasn't totally safe, but it was safe enough
Mm.
for me to really begin a journey of coming to know my inner world, you know,
Mm.
in a new way.
What what was next for you? Had you been in talk therapy before? Was that something that came into the picture?
It's so funny. I had tried to be in talk therapy a few times. Like I'd use my health insurance, and I would like find somebody. I remember I found one therapist who was a CBT person, and she kind of met with me twice, and she was like, "There's nothing wrong with you. You don't need to be in therapy." And I was like, "I'm pretty sure there's something wrong here. I would feel like something's missing." And she, I had like this huge history of trauma and neglect and anxiety, and she had no idea because she's just like 2 sessions. It's like, "Oh no, you're fine."
You're functioning. You're
Yeah.
good.
So
Yeah.
it took me a while and I was so good at masking, right?
Mm.
I was very high functioning.
Mhm.
I was a Yale graduate. People were like,
Mhm.
what could possibly be wrong with you? So it took me a while to find someone who could get underneath all of my, very sophisticated structures for keeping it all together so that
Mhm.
I could feel like I could actually soften.
Yeah.
So I was in my late 20s by the time I found a somatic psychotherapist who was a Help Call Me practitioner and began to do that kind of deeper work that I needed.
What do you think made them the right person in terms of, like, was it their skill set? Was it their connection with you? Did it feel like, okay, this person has done work on themselves? Like, what do you think it was?
Yeah, I think it was all of that. I think it was their personality. I think it was the skill set. They were also an integral or they had a spiritual orientation. She had, and she was also, just willing to go in, willing
Mhm.
to challenge, willing to stay with, willing to keep going until we got underneath whatever the thing was.
Yes.
So, I think that was important because I have such a strong, and I've always been this way. I have such a strong personality,
Mm.
that people often kind of stop right at that, kind of at the gate.
Mm.
Uh,
Mhm.
and yeah, she just didn't do that.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm in a thing right now where I'm trying to figure out if the person I'm working with right now is gonna continue to be the right fit for me going forward, and it is these, like the way you put that was so good, like, do they stop at the gate? Are they able to, like, keep moving and, like, not have their own stuff get in the way?
Right.
And then how much of it is working with that person and seeing where it could go, and how much of it is saying, like, "Oh, I gotta find someone different." And so it just sounds like you knew. Yeah.
Well, I mean, I didn't know enough about therapy or even about what I needed. It was really intuition.
Mhm.
And also, this therapist was working really relationally. And
Mhm.
so, and really attending to things like frame and
Mhm.
I was kind of squirrely
Mm.
so I was a little bit like I was hyper intellectualized, very high functioning, didn't quite know for sure if I should be in therapy, felt enough things going on that I felt like maybe I could use some help, but could anybody really help me? And what is this anyway?
Mhm.
So mean, there were a lot of things that I now understand
Yeah.
that she needed to hold that not all therapists hold.
Mhm.
Like a real attention to frame, for example.
Mhm.
So that the rhythm of that weekly therapy was actually very important for me.
And how did she hold the frame? Was like kind of insisting that it be weekly or
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. Did she insist? I can't remember. I just remember some conversations that really stuck with me
Mhm.
about kind of honoring
Mm.
you know, the time or something. And I mean, in my life, because my parents have been so erratic, I mean, she's also still my therapist to this day. So this
Oh,
is,
awesome.
I'm 50. So however many, 20 years in, I had not at that time had anyone who sat with me every week and asked
Uh,
me how I was doing.
mhm.
I had just like not experienced that. So and if you had tried to talk to me about that as a thing, I'd have been like, "That's no big deal." But now looking back, I can go, "Oh, that was very significant." For like 11 years to just have that weekly contact with someone who was tracking me
Mm.
and tracking my life and paying attention. But I didn't understand because I was also, I mean, we talk so much about trauma, and I had talked so much about trauma, but for me, emotional neglect was such a huge part of the experience, but that's invisible. When you've been neglected, you don't know what's missing
Yes.
emotionally. And so that was the thing that I couldn't have articulated until I'd had years in, maybe some therapy training to understand why it worked.
Mhm. Yeah. So when did it become clear to you that you wanted to become a therapist yourself?
Yeah. I mean, somewhere in there, I was like, clear that this sort of corporate deal was not for me, but I wasn't sure what I needed to do. And so I had a mentor who just told me, ask the universe. And I was like, I don't know what you're talking about. Ask the universe. But okay, I guess that's like praying. So I know about that. So I'll pray. I'll ask the universe. And a little while later, maybe a few weeks, I woke up knowing that I was a healer. I didn't
Mm.
know what that meant, what it meant to
Mhm.
be a healer, but it was like the clouds cleared and I was like, "Oh, I'm a healer." Just as clear as day. And so then I set about trying to figure out what that could mean. I
Mm.
took some like intro to midwifery classes. I took some acupressure massage. I was interested in Chinese medicine. Um, I just like took lots of workshops and classes, always kind of underground. And I eventually started doing body work,
Huh.
still working. uh, so one foot in that corporate world and one foot in this healing world. And as I started doing body work, people just started having experiences on my table.
Mm.
Emotions would come. People would have memories of, experiences. And I was like, what is this that this body work is, creating these openings? And then I heard about somatics,
Mm.
and I was like, oh, I think this is what I want to study.
Mm. And you had been working with that therapist already?
By that time, I was working with the therapist. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
Okay. And then did it feel when you were working with people on the table, noticing these huge things happening for them, did it feel similar to what you had experienced in breath work or with your therapist? Did it feel different?
It sometimes felt similar to what I'd
Mhm.
experienced in the breath work, but not with the therapist. There's a little
Mhm.
timeline thing. I started working with a therapist, but I had already been doing the body work.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Yeah.
So, but sometimes what was happening on the table was more subtle.
Mhm.
Sometimes it wasn't subtle at all.
Mhm.
And I would have moments where I'd be like, if only I knew more about what to do
Mm.
with this. I had
Mhm.
definitely had people who were like having, now what I understand, were literally having trauma complete, you know,
Mm.
in through their nervous systems, right? While we were doing the table work. And, some of those sessions were really beautiful and some of them were like, what is happening?
Yeah.
And I just knew I needed more training.
Yeah. Yeah. And so that's when you found somatics.
That's when I found somatics. And then it seemed kind of crazy to like change up my life and go to graduate school. But that's what I did. I was thinking I was going to wait, and then my mother died, and I just felt like, oh, the time is now.
Hmm.
Life is short.
Hmm. Was that scary?
My mother dying, or
Well, I meant you're changing your career
yes. Oh my God.
so suddenly, but yeah, your mother dying too.
Yeah. I mean, my mother dying was really a catalyst. Was really like a
Mm.
no. Now you are,
Mm.
son. You got to get on the path. You don't be wasted time, right? But the changing careers, not knowing what I was going to do, how I was going to do it financially, that was very scary. It's definitely.
Mhm. Yeah. How did you give notice and like actually make that pivot?
Well, my first year of grad school, I kept working.
Okay.
The company I was working for let me go to halftime,
Mm-hmm.
and which was great. But I was in an experiential program, and it
Mhm.
was so, you're in therapy school and they're inviting you to unearth all of your stuff. You're like writing papers about your own process, journey, and doing all this somatic work. It was very evocative. And so it was like I was going to school and having these, openings and explorations. And then I was going to work to this very conservative, very male, kind of hostile, you know, uh, corporate culture. And I could not do it. I just could not, I was like, the level of armor that I can't actually sustain the level of armor that I need to go into this environment if I'm doing this therapy school work, and so I let it go.
Yeah, that makes so much sense. Like
Yeah,
to have to find a way to take off the armor to go back into the healing and excavating, knowing you're going to have to put it back on.
right.
Yeah, it just sounds almost impossible.
It was, and I thought it would be fun because I had been always having this side bodywork practice, but actually
Mm.
that was different because I was still, when I was doing the bodywork, I was in the practitioner role. I wasn't like
Mhm.
excavating my own, deepest stuff,
Yeah.
while also learning how to do a whole new thing. So I finally was like, okay, I'm gonna let that go, which was very scary because then
Mm.
and I really supported myself with bodywork through the rest of grad school, and also at the time my partner was super supportive, and I made it through like by the tips of my fingers.
Yeah. And then what did your work look like at that point? Did you start a private practice or
Well, I started out. I was interning at the Women's Therapy Center
Mhm.
and for a couple of years, and then I moved into a private practice internship,
Mm.
and I've been in private practice ever since. And yeah, I kind of knew when I went to grad school I was going to be in private practice because I'd already had the body work practice, and I really liked having that kind of independence.
Mhm.
I really would like to work in that way and really have the freedom to integrate all these different things, that I had been learning over however many years and practicing. I just wanted to go deeper and get more creative in my healing work.
Yeah. As you've been listening to me talking to my wonderful guest, maybe you've been thinking that they might be the right next practitioner for you. You can find their contact information in the show notes, and I'll be saying it at the end of this episode out loud. I cannot promise you they have an opening, of course. They are really good, so don't get mad at me if they don't. I'm also a healer. I help people who are estranged from a parent or caregiver and other folks who are ready to do some really big healing. I use brain spotting and parts work to get at the root of emotional pain. If you have the feeling I might be the right next practitioner for you or for someone you love, go to anniezam.com and learn more about working with me. And as someone getting your own healing, like you told us about the breath work and about this incredible therapist, and like what else has come up for you over the years in your own healing?
Yeah. I mean, I have tried a lot of different things. I've been a big proponent of all kinds of body-oriented intervention. I have tried, Chinese medicine, Song, lots of different kinds of body, structural integration, Feldenkrais, just like
Mm,
dance therapy. Dance has been a huge part of my healing journey. More recently, I've been learning about psychedelics. That's been
mm,
huge. I am a seeker. I really have always felt like some kind of spiritual practice has been important. Meditation, singing. It's all healing. It's all part of the journey.
mhm,
But it's just for me been about really noticing my own edges.
mm, mhm,
Like my
mm,
most recently, I've really been doing a deep dive around emotional neglect.
mhm,
Because I did all of this work and I still ended up in a relationship that was really difficult.
mm,
And it ended in right before the pandemic. I was like, what is making it so that I am choosing relationships that look like this?
mhm,
Being who I am, at that point, was mostly doing couples therapy, you
mhm.
know, and it was like, how did I choose this?
Yeah.
And through some of the psychedelic explorations, I really got to understand the profound impact of neglect and how much of my whatever ways of being, thinking, moving in relationship have been shaped by a kind of emotional uh, invisibility that I'd
Mhm,
always lived with.
mhm,
So that's been a real big opening in more recent years that I'm still unpacking.
mhm. I heard this thing from Clementine Morrigan, who's a writer who writes a lot about not a therapist, but just writes as a person about childhood stuff, and I've heard her say something that feels true for me too, and I'm curious how you feel about it, is like, for her, of all the traumas that she's been through, and some of them, if she tells people, they'll have a big reaction. For her, it feels like it was actually the emotional neglect that caused the most pain and had the biggest impact. And I feel that way for me too. And it also feels like sometimes it's like a subtler story. And so what I share with people, it's usually not the emotional neglect that would get the biggest reaction.
Exactly. Yeah.
Mhm.
Right. Right. Because the thing that's deep about the emotional neglect is all of the other big T trauma stuff that I experienced is embedded inside of that context. Right.
Mhm.
So it's not just, oh, this horrible thing happened. It's that this horrible thing happened and no one noticed, or this horrible thing happened and no one attended to me.
Yeah.
So I'm saying a thing and then no one's listening or no one's taking it in or no one's responding. And the profundity of that, right?
Yeah.
To experience harm or hurt and have no one actually even care or respond or notice, right? There's just the depth of the aloneness.
Yes, for such a long time.
Right. And so for a little kid, it's devastating.
Yeah. Yeah.
But it's in the background. It's sort of like the air you're breathing or this water you're swimming in as a fish. It's like
Mhm.
that neglect is just everywhere all the time. And it's hard to see it till you're out of it.
Yes. Yeah. And have you had experiences of, like, being able to go in and attend to those parts of you, or how have you experienced some of that healing?
Yeah, I've had some really profound experiences in recent years. I had an experience where I actually, and this was the psychedelic work, actually worked like reparented my 8-year-old self
Mm,
through a traumatic experience.
mm,
And that now, when people talk about soul retrieval, I really understand because
mm,
that was like, oh, I went and I got, and
mm,
I helped her sort of. understand what happened and sort of pulled her out of that, got her out of that room, out of that experience. And it was, yeah, it was life changing, actually. It was like, it felt like that particular moment was a kind of severing of relationship with myself, when I was 8, that
Yeah.
I was able to reconstitute as a result my some core boundaries.
Mm.
And yeah, it was profound. And then I also had an experience where I was born premature 2 months, and I relived my birth.
Mm.
And I also, I mean, this was a longer trajectory. It did probably like, and someone's still working with this, but probably about a year and a half worth of kind of deep work with my my infant self.
Mm.
And that one was interesting because it was all so pre-verbal
Yeah.
and so deeply in my body. I'd always talked over years, particularly as I was training as a therapist and doing trauma training, sensory motor, and also somatic experiencing, about like feeling like I had this freeze response that I didn't really understand.
Mhm.
And when I did that work where I experienced my birth, I got like all this deep freeze. This is like birth. This is like being born, being placed in a whatever you call those things, incubator type thing.
Incubator thing?
Yeah.
Mhm.
Being alone and cold and struggling to
Mhm.
breathe and all of that, like this just like, oh,
Mm.
that's what that is. No
Mm.
wonder no amount of therapy has been able to touch that thing. So I did that work, and then I ended up doing this like water massage, birth trauma healing
Mm.
work, where you sort of get moved around in warm water. Anyway, so I did a whole series of that.
Yeah, did you feel like you were able to reach that tiny, tiny baby?
I do. I felt
Oof.
like, I mean, it took a while. Like I came out of that session feeling like, well, now I understand a lot more. How am I going to work with this? Because it is all so.
Yeah.
But I just a combination of body work, cranial sacral, this water
Mm.
massage, also some deep spiritual work. I did a lot of like shamanic journeys, working with ancestors, working with this part.
Mm.
Yeah, I just did a lot of different things, and I eventually started to feel like this part is coming back.
Mm.
My body is thawing. It's like another layer of softening. I remember having this experience of like, oh, like icicles falling off from the space around my heart, just
Mm.
a level of, again, coming home to myself.
Mm. Yeah, like warmth,
Yeah.
softness,
Yeah.
enough air.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Oh,
Wow. It sounds really intuitive too about, like, giving that baby everything that she needed and
mm,
just, like, attending to make sure she got everything she needed, you know?
mm.
Wow.
Yeah. And it was interesting, that work, because what I got is there was some way it couldn't be me. Like in that other
Mm.
experience with the 8-year-old, I really was there with her, and I sort of walked through the whole thing with her. And I was like, sort of channeling divine mother energy, you
Mm.
know. But in this other experience, it could not be me who
Mm.
was offering the thing. That's why I had to call it ancestral help. It
Mm.
was something about having some sense of some greater care, some greater container, some, of holding for that part that was really important
Mm.
and powerful. It's just powerful to feel the vastness of the ancestral support that was really holding not just me now, but really holding me from the moment of my first breath. That
Mm.
was incredibly healing to understand.
And did you feel a whole group of ancestors, or did it feel like a particular being?
Yeah. I have a few ancestors who have shown up very like explicitly, like, "Hey, I'm here." These are
Mhm.
elder ancestors, so not in this century or the one before,
Mhm.
but who've shown up. And at times, I've sort of gotten images of like kind of a sea of folks, but
Mhm.
but there has only been a few that kind of actually speak for the collective.
Mm. I'm just pausing to it feels so profound.
Yeah, I feel like I'm talking about it like, "Oh, yeah, then these ancestors showed up,"
Mhm.
It really, like, the depth of the spiritual component of that, because when I talk about the neglect and the experience of, there's a kind of emptiness that you can live with,
Mhm.
or that I lived with inside of that, experience, um, of really just having parents who were, you know, traumatized and young and immature and unable to
Mhm.
offer what I needed. And it just felt like a hole that would never get filled. And to have the experience of just to feel like, oh, my parents were also longing, and to be able to see them inside of this broader timeline and to
Mm.
understand that it was never just them
Mm.
that was here to hold me, or,
Mm.
they did what they could, but also always there was support,
Mm.
there was this really sweet moment in this um, experience of having been born where I was like hearing the voice of something, ancestor, angel, whatever, just like praying, coaxing every breath, just
Mm.
this sense of every breath as precious. And that even in that cold place where I felt alone as an infant, I wasn't,
Mm.
not spiritually. There was something there. So that piece has been a kind of healing that I couldn't have anticipated. I didn't go looking for. I didn't know that that was going to be part of it.
Yes.
I was like, I just want to make sure I don't do another relationship like that.
Yes. And then it's, like, so deep.
Yeah.
The healing is so deep, and it's, like, not maybe this is my bias, it's, like, not something that would necessarily happen in talk therapy.
I don't see how it could happen
Mhm.
in talk therapy. I mean, I had done a lot of work and a lot of creative therapy. I hadn't even
Mhm.
really done traditional talk therapy,
Yeah.
by itself. And I had gone very deep, including with the breath work, with some of these memories. I had done a
Yeah.
lot. I felt, and I had healed a lot.
Mhm.
And I was sort of surprised to be like, wow, look at how much how much is possible and what else is here, It was just like I don't know how I would have gotten to it.
Yeah.
Especially the preemie stuff. I mean, I guess I could have, yeah, with breath work and some focus, maybe, stumbled upon or hypnosis, stumbled into some memories probably. But that experience of literally feeling myself be born, feeling like that, yeah, that was deep.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah. So in your own work, when you do a piece of healing, do you notice your own work changing every time?
Absolutely.
Yeah? What do you notice?
Well, first of all, the heart opening and that I'm this layer that I've just been experiencing in these last 5 years, which also happened after I had a kid. So that was
Mm.
also in there because my kid was really young when I started doing this piece of work, has dropped me more deeply into my body
Mm.
and into my feeling self. So I mean, I still can be pretty intellectualized, but I have way more access to this deeper place. I just have this spirit. I mean, I think it's always been there, but not in a conscious way. I have a different kind of spiritual connection
Mm.
that really informs my presence now in the room with people.
Mm.
So, yeah, I feel way more slowed down, way more tapped in,
Mm.
way more like I feel braver. I
Mm,
take more risk, which is I take a lot of risk, but I take more risk. I'm more like, let's cut the bullshit. You're either here to heal or not. I don't I do best with people who are like ready to go in and do the work. People who need like to be convinced that therapy is worthwhile. I'm like, nah, I'm probably gonna scare them, right off the bat because I'm just too direct. But yeah, I'm just a little bit more like, no, there is healing here. Let's get to it.
yeah.
And part of how that shows up is just a real like a deepening of my own presence.
Hmm.
And I trust myself in a way that I didn't before. Like, I didn't even know I didn't, but this
Hmm.
is a different kind of trust. Like, yeah, I feel like, oh, yeah, no, I kind of know what I'm doing. And it's not me. Like, sometimes it's like part of the reason I know what I'm doing is because I'm getting out of the way. There's something else moving here that is bigger than me. And I trust all of that more. And
Yes. Yes.
I don't always understand it, but I trust
Yes. I can just so identify with this. And like the feeling that it's not that I wasn't present before,
it.
and I know there were some really good things that happened before.
Right. Exactly. Exactly.
And it's like it does remind me a little bit of the emotional neglect piece that you were talking about, that it's like I just didn't know how present I could be.
Exactly.
And maybe I still don't know how present I can become. I mean, that's another weird thing to think about or to feel into, but it does feel remarkably different.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like, even before we hit record, I was like, "Huh, let's see, I'm feeling nervous," but actually I think I'm just excited. Like, that kind of just vulnerability in checking in, I probably wouldn't have done before, because I
Yeah.
probably would have thought, "Oh, Sonia doesn't need to know I'm nervous. I don't wanna put that on her." But now I'm like, "No, I just wanna be completely here with what's here." Yeah. So what are you most excited about in your work?
So many things. First of all, my work feels incredible right now. Like I
Mm,
feel so alive in it and so just like on purpose. It feels like in these times where things are completely bananas, in the
mhm,
world, that I almost feel like, oh, it, it it was time for me to wake up. I kind of feel like this relationship that I came out of was like
mm,
also a catalyst for me to like get my shit together so that I could really be available, ready, and present for this time.
mm,
And I really feel it deeply. And something like 60 to 70% of my practice is couples at any given time, but I'm also working a lot with leaders,
mm.
particularly women of color leaders. And I I just feel really enlivened by the work. Starting to do some group work in which I'm incorporating more of this spiritual, the sort of psycho spiritual pieces.
Mm.
Doing the body base, we're doing breath work, we're doing movement,
Mm.
but I'm also, inviting in some of these sort of more spiritual conversations. So that's coming soon. I'm really excited. I have the outline for a book I want to write about couples and complex PTSD.
Amazing.
Yeah, and I have some things that I want to get done. I have some work to do, and I'm ready to do it. I just need a little time. A little time.
And is that showing up at all, like, as your kids getting older, or how's that going?
Well, no, but I am really working on it. I forgot the other thing that just recently happened is I got an ADHD diagnosis, which
Ah.
explains so much of my life. And so I've been learning some things about my relationship to time
Mm.
that I think are going to help me create more space for these projects, but it's coming.
Oh, beautiful. I know it's, like, a huge question, and that's why you're gonna write a book, but I just gotta say, I'm so curious about your thoughts on couples and complex PTSD.
I mean, the big thing that I will say
Mhm.
is that, and part of the reason I'm thinking about this book is because I spent so many years myself in couples therapy. The difficult relationship I talked about earlier. no, we went through 6 different therapists,
Mm-hmm.
and of course there was complex PTSD in the mix. Absolutely. And one of the things I wish that folks had really attended to was just that you cannot talk about content when nervous systems are dysregulated,
Yes. Yes.
and there's pressure when you're in couples therapy to get to the content, to do the thing, to accomplish the goal, to whatever, and that pressure, sometimes it's coming from the therapist and sometimes it's coming from the clients. Like, yeah, whatever, you want to go slow, but we got this stuff to
Fix
work out
this.
right now. Fix
Mm-hmm.
it, right?
Mm-hmm.
And the reality is we cannot, the thing that is needs to be fixed is like noticing dysregulation
Yeah.
and learning how to tend to it in ourselves and each other. You know, if you're calm and you're relaxed and you're open, you can have any conversation, even
Yeah.
difficult conversations. But you cannot do that even if you're super skilled and really good at communication. People come in with like, we need communication skills. No, I mean, maybe they do. But most of the time with the people I'm seeing, it's not the communication skills that are the problem. It is, what do you do? How do you even know that you're dysregulated?
Yeah.
And what do you do when that happens, right? So that is the first thing that, and also, so sometimes what people will do, like there's emotionally focused couples therapy and, some of these modalities which will try to deepen into the emotional experience and they'll treat that as a slowdown. But with people who have that kind of complex PTSD where the dysregulation can kind of go off the charts, the deepening into the emotional experience without attending to dysregulation will actually make it worse. And
Hmm.
that was one of the big mistakes I feel like we kept running into with folks who were trying to invite vulnerability in a
Mm-hmm.
context in which it actually was not, that we didn't have enough scaffolding in place to hold the vulnerability that was being forward.
Yes. That really makes sense to me. The best couples therapy that me and Ames have gotten has been with someone who just constantly used to frustrate the shit out of me, but would just be like, slow down. What's happening in your body right now? And yeah, that that was exactly what you said. That was the only way to really move forward with any kind of conversation.
Yeah.
Because I can be so smart, Sonia. I have a lot of
Exactly.
answers.
Yes. Right. Me too.
Oh, yeah.
Me too. And a lot of analysis. And of course, it's easy to see across from you. You can, we can all see what our partner's doing wrong or what, all of what's happening over there. Right. But to be able, no one, no matter how good we are, can see all of our own blind spots.
Yeah.
And also, the container has to hold that. Right.
Yeah.
Like, and help us see in a safe enough way our own struggles.
Hmm. Yeah. All right. Well, I can't wait for that. I mean, I will wait for that.
It's,
I'm really excited about that. Anything else you want to share?
Um, yeah, I really deeply believe that healing is multidimensional. I don't actually think I'll ever like be done,
Mhm.
Um, and I love having many ways to work, having many avenues, for unearthing. And, part of the reason I think I could go so deep in those experiences I had is because I had done so much work to be available.
Mm.
And so I just feel like, okay, I'm excited. What's next? What else we got? What else we go heal? I don't know.
Yeah.
Tell me what else is in there. I'm ready. So I trust the process and I'm in it.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Sonia.
Thank you for having me.
To learn more about Sonya Brewer, go to sonyabrewer.com. I want to thank Ames Palms for editing this podcast. If you found this episode supportive, please do a couple of things. Share it with your favorite therapist or healer. That is absolutely the most important way we reach more people. And if you haven't already, please hit follow and give us 5 stars. That is so helpful to this podcast. And thank you so much for listening. I'll see you next time.